Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. I am Phil, and as I said last time, I am here with returning guest, Mr. Travis Richey. Hello, sir.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It has been an interesting couple of weeks. I had I don't know when this is going to air, but I had Gallifrey 1 last weekend, which was the big Doctor Who convention. I went and had a big show there with Idiot's Lantern, and those are all today. This year's show won't be online yet, but if you want to check out some of last year's show, search for Idiot's Lantern on YouTube, and you can find some of those. They're great. And I did autograph sessions, and people actually came and I signed things. People seem surprised when they ask me how much an autograph is, and I'm like, oh, free. I'll sign anything. If you want to buy one of my posters, I'll sell to send you that. But like, I am not into selling autographs. I think even if I ever became even more famous, I just don't like the idea of actors selling autographs. Or even writers, really. Buy my book and I'll sign it for you, or buy a poster or a photo or some piece of merchandise and I'll sign it for you. But like, I don't know, the idea of selling an autograph just seems really icky to me. So anyway, that happened, and then while I was there, I got an audition request actually for an interesting little thing for a TV show. And I can't really talk about it, but I booked it, and but I kind of booked it because I'm the only person that could have booked it in a weird way. So that is going to be airing in probably April, and then the show that I'd already shot for Apple TV is finally coming out. It's announced for April 5th, where I get to have big long scene with Colin Farrell, so that'll be fun to see. And so it's been an interesting weekend, and I got myself a brand new computer, so I finally can start editing my web series that I shot last fall again. So
Nice.
yeah. How are you?
All right. But I've been very curious because yes, the new reading assignment was to read the 5-issue Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man 2099 miniseries that came out in January.
Yes, indeed. Yes, and I have it on my Marvel Unlimited app. It closed on me, but I have all the issues there.
So, as someone who hadn't been reading it currently, I mean, they just like miniseries here and there. I know you read the '90s stuff. So, what did you think of this as compared to the '90s series?
So it's been interesting because it was kind of weird getting back into it. As we talked about, Spider-Man 2099 is probably the series that got me into comic books, got me hooked back when I was a kid. And so to come back to it and at once see how it has changed and also see how it has not changed is kind of interesting. Like, they keep that like early 90s retro futuristic language, like, you can't swear, so you say shock instead of shit or something, or or fuck or whatever. So are we allowed to swear on this? It's a podcast, right? You can bleep it out if you don't want the mature rating, I guess. But so that all was kind of there, and it doesn't work as well now for some reason as it used to. So it took me kind of a little bit, my brain, to kind of like reset back a couple of notches to that decade where that was the way things were written. Otherwise, I was pretty into it. I like the update of the villains. It's basically not what I expected either. I thought it was going to be kind of a 5-issue arc, but it's 5 single episodes, 5 single stories, and you get each different monster. So you get the vampire, the werewolf, the man thing, which was interesting in the last episode, the updated man thing, and you saw zombies. That was the first one. Yeah. And they do kind of like, there is repercussions that kind of flow through them, but it was neat. And I will say, I didn't remember Miguel O'Hara being quite such of a dick as he is, and I guess as I saw him in the Across the Spider-Verse too. So I don't know if that's how he used to be.
No, I mean it depends on the writers too, because this is a different writer than Peter David, who wrote this stuff in the '90s. So I mean, I don't know if that's a part of it, or if they are trying to like kind of make him more similar to the movie, the character in the movie. So
yeah, people will have to chime in and remind us if he was like. Or I mean, I suppose I could go back and reread them. I do have a bunch of the.
In the '90s, he seemed a little more like a smart ass, not as like just
like because he's very smart. He is very intelligent, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He seems a little bit more like a bully now to me. Am I wrong?
No, I can totally see that. Yeah, because like I said, there's been a few miniseries before this, but it was by this same writer, Steve Orlando. But yeah, no, I've been getting that vibe lately. So, like I said, I don't want to like mirror the movie or that much, or
does it? Because I do know, I do recognize that it kind of makes him different from the other Spider-Men that we've known, right? So where you've got more of an innocence. And responsibility thrust upon you type of vibe. I don't know of any other Spider-Men that are quite so like. You know what it is? He's almost got this like like hyper masculine thing going on. Like when I play Ultimate Frisbee with guys, they're a little bit aggro, and you're like, chill out. This is just a game. This doesn't matter. And that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from Miguel O'Hara these days.
I wonder too if it's like the writer's take on like the time period too. It's like, oh, it's just harder in the future, or just how is society then? And because again, I mean, you look at the real world. I mean, look at the way people acted, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago as compared to now. And,
yeah,
things change. And I
think, so here's a question. Were we more or less optimistic in the 90s? Do you think? I think it's almost hard to say, because there was a big streak of nihilism there with the likes of Terminator and Judge Dredd and those kind of things coming around, and now we've got this this whole big wave of superhero movies, and those tend to be much more optimistic. But in general, are we less pessimistic or more pessimistic now?
I don't know. There's so many factors. Like, I'm always like, well, we weren't getting hit with as much, but we didn't know as much bad news as we do today, because
right, we're just more aware now.
Wasn't as big, yeah. Because anytime I'm just people are just like, oh, why is it so much more? Why is the world so much more horrible? Or if they say, on the pessimistic side, but it's just like, is it worse, or we just we're aware of the whole world instead of our little corner of it.
We were also coming out of the Cold War back in the early 90s, right? And so we had that kind of specter over us of nuclear annihilation for decades, and we're finally coming out of that. And then the electronic age and the birth of the internet, right in there in the 90s was a big thing. So we were kind of seeing that new connectedness. I think there was a lot of optimism back then about what the future of technology was going to be. And now we are coming into this age of AI and seeing, how much how bad people can be on the internet, and how like misinformation, disinformation can actually affect the world. And I think in general, we're not viewing technology in quite so bright a light these days.
Yeah. I mean, is it always just we always want to romanticize, where technology is going to take us, but then it's, I don't know if there's just is there always going to be people who try to use it for nefarious purposes, because what was it in the 50s? I mean, they thought we were going to have flying cars by now.
Right. Well, and so the things that we were promised from technology haven't really come to fruition, but a lot of the things that we've seen in popular culture, like negative things, seem to be coming up. Like, when Terminator warns us of Skynet, and here we are having robots that seem to be pretty close to not needing us anymore. It's kind of interesting. And so back to this, I think that these stories reflect that a little bit of the idea that it turns some of the previous like beliefs that we may have had on their heads. Like, first of all, like the vampires that are kind of living in peace with each other or with humanity, and then here comes Dracula back to life after however long, and he's like, oh, success for vampire kind. And I mean, at the end of it all, like I said, Peter, but he's not. It's Miguel is like, yeah, vampires are fine. They're off on their own planet. Go be with them. And
as we check out every 100 years, yeah, things are going to change when you come back.
You miss a lot. Sorry, I've got if anybody's watching this wondering, I've got my dog under me, like refusing to take no for an answer when it comes to playing with her ball. So at least it's the ball and not like she was chewing on a bone earlier, which I was worried about the noise. So
I mean,
anyway.
Yeah, but I always think that's like the trickiest thing about writing vampires. I mean, you wrote a vampire novel where it's like, you have to think in terms of like, this person is either lived centuries or they're going to live centuries. So it's like the thinking is not typical of your average character.
Right. Well, and what does that do? It does, like a long life would do different things to different people, right? Mm-hmm. So for one person, it could make you very angry. But for another person, it could give you a perspective on humanity that is more benevolent. And so I have both kinds of characters in my books. The other thing I was going to say about technology is that this thing that we're in right now, where we realize that we have no privacy, like privacy is essentially dead, and companies like Facebook and Google know so much about us, and I think about people who use like Android products, and they're so vociferous in their praise and defense of an Android phone. And I kind of look at that and go, well, but I mean, Google gives that operating system to whoever for free because their business model is your information. And so like there is no privacy. Or the people talking about COVID, the vaccine was like full of tracking devices and stuff. I'm like, well, it doesn't need to be. You're already being tracked with your phone that you choose to carry around with you. And so anyway, so that is reflected in the story, in the last story with Man-Thing, and how in Nuevo York, they have everything, all the data on everybody is just complete and omniscient, and they know everything about you, and not only the things outside of yourself like your bank, but also like your bionetic implants, like your heart, your pacemaker, or your bionetic lung or whatever. And if you don't have the information, like so there's this kind of uprising as this beast comes into town, and the beast has the ability to erase data. Like basically, if it touches you, it doesn't kill you necessarily, but it erases your entire data self, right? Every piece of data about you is just gone. But what does that mean? What does that mean to society? Like the people start really cheering this monster on, but they don't really understand the repercussions of, what happens when you can't access a bank, or when everything runs on digital, information, and then all that is gone. So it's an interesting story, and it ends on a nice cliffhanger that leads into a promise for more 2099, and I'm intrigued.
Yeah, they did announce that a little bit. I don't know. I guess they're gonna start. I don't know if Spider-Man 2099 is going to be ongoing, or if there's going to be other titles too. So
okay,
because he has been Steve Orlando has been introducing more people. Like you did get a glimpse, I think, of isn't it Moon Knight 2099 in this one? Yeah,
which I didn't see much of a difference in Moon Knight 2099, but yeah, it was nice to see Moon Knight again.
Yeah, it's basically just a different person, but just it was kind of similar. And I think was it the last one? I know he had like a new version of Carnage, but yeah, just the
Carnage?
technology.
Oh, yeah. The one that I missed. Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back and read that. I saw that teased somewhere.
But the technology thing in one of the previous miniseries he did, they had this thing where all the most rich and powerful in society had like these black cards, basically could get them whatever they wanted, and they were pretty much above the law. So people were just, it was like, yeah, they're running amok, and then there's people who were just like trying to like kill them and steal. If anyone could get their hands on these cards, they're like, oh, why have it made? My life is made at this point. So of course there's going to be desperate people coming after these cards. So yeah.
Yeah,
so
kind of an eat the rich story.
Basically show, and it's like, technology can, kind of not go in a good direction here in the next couple years, couple decades.
We are on it does feel like we are currently on a precipice, right? And I mean, you and I are of an age, like I was listening to Jon Stewart on his watching Jon Stewart host The Daily Show again, and he was talking about how TV is a dying medium, and he says something like, well, it's not going to die before I die, right? Because then I'm okay. But I am not all that certain that our society is going to continue in a healthy way until we don't need it to be,
Yeah,
just from a selfish point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the problem with some of the people these days, where it's like they're not worried about anything past their lifespan. I mean, some of us with children are just like, yeah, I would like the world to continue running even after I'm gone. So
yeah, that'd be nice. But I worry about our own lifespan. Like I kind of think that maybe I don't know. I just am concerned.
Well, that's like when we get politicians who are like, in their 70s, their 80s.
Well,
it's like, I'm like, how invested are you when you're not that long for this planet?
Exactly. But also, like, I see the amount of people that are getting, money for things in politics. And, did you hear about Clarence Thomas and John Oliver's offer to Clarence Thomas?
No.
Oh, well, the big thing, Clarence Thomas is a justice on the Supreme Court, and there is a lot is known about how much money he's been taking since he's been on the Supreme Court. And so at once he'll say, oh, I don't do this because I love it, and I don't do this for the paycheck. But he also then turns around and takes a
lot of money,
bribes, and some rich guy gave him a loan for a motor coach that he's so proud of, and then basically forgave the loan. Anyway, John Oliver on his show this week offered him $1 million a year to resign.
Wow.
Yeah. And he has 30 days to accept, and he's throwing in this $2.4 million motor coach that is sick. And anyway, the point is that they like, what do they want all this money for? It's not like they can take it with them. Yeah. And I feel so confused about why humans are behaving so blatantly in the against human interest, right? And so, like, I get greed. I understand greed, but isn't there a limit? Isn't there a point at which $1 billion is all you need, and anything more you could put back into humanity? Anyway, all this is we're getting off track of our discussion of Spider-Man here.
Oh, this 2099 is making us think bleak thoughts.
Well, but here's the thing: 2099 is only 70 years away now, or 75, whereas it was like 100 and something years away back when we were reading it before. So it feels so much closer, and if things have gotten worse since then, it does reflect itself in the story a little bit, and so you do have slums and barrios, and they do make an attempt to make the barrio feel like it's so that's they don't talk down on it in the story. They treat it like it has its own culture. It's a lot like the slums in like Dubai, not Dubai, but Mumbai or other the big cities in India. And these people are just impoverished, but they do live their lives, right? Because they have to. But you can't imagine that it's actually truly joyful and rewarding of an existence. And so in this story, they do that. They kind of make it seem like the poor people who live literally under Nuevo York are still like fulfilled to be poor. And I think that there's this I don't know, I feel like that is done to make us feel not so bad about all the destitute and like really impoverished people that live in the world, and so we don't maybe have to care as much, where there are people living on our street corners, in the rain, in the cold at night, and it wouldn't take all that much in the grand scheme of things to care for them.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And
there's people with 2, 3, 4 houses.
right. What do you need all that for? What do you need a yacht that's big enough to fit another yacht inside of it?
Private planes. Yeah, I know. Oh.
And that is one thing I was again bringing it all back to Spider-Man. That's one thing that they have done pretty well in the Spider-Man books, even with that like kind of false optimism of poverty. They do really shine a light on the excesses of the rich and powerful. So that's pretty good.
I mean, I guess it is believable where it's just like, oh yeah, in this future state there are still rich people. There are still people who
not even still more rich. Because
yeah.
right, hasn't the trend over time gone the rich and the poor get further and further apart, and there's no reason to believe that won't continue without a revolution. And I'm not saying that a revolution won't happen. Like
I mean, if stuff gets to a certain point, people are going to be like, well, we have no choice.
Yeah, right. You step on our necks long enough, and pretty soon we'll rise up and fight back. There's the what was it? I say to people, like, I love Star Trek too, right? I think that's part of why I loved 2099 at first, was because it was a sci-fi take on Spider-Man. I love sci-fi, like hard sci-fi. And so I love Star Trek. But even in Star Trek's Utopia, where famously on Earth there's no hunger, there's no homelessness, there's no money.
There's no money, yeah.
Right, exactly. So everybody has what they want and can pursue their interests. But even to get that, we had to have a third world war, a nuclear war, in the Star Trek universe. So, and what's also interesting, I'm sorry, I'm getting all the way off topic on these, but like,
I love conversation.
But there's an episode of Deep Space Nine that takes place this year, where Cisco and company go back in time and see the homeless encampments, where they'd basically just cordoned off entire sections of the cities, and walled them off to be these homeless places, and that takes place this year, and things are not a whole lot better than that at the moment.
No, I just kind of got discouraged, because I always thought a few years ago, I'm like, oh, if the entire world faced like a similar problem or a threat, maybe it would bring us all together. COVID hit, and I was proven wrong. So
right. Wasn't that so surprising? I honestly also thought that COVID was going to be kind of a unifier of the world, like, because you think that it takes because we're fighting against each other, right? So it has to be something other than us, right? So this third force, like aliens or virus or whatever, has to be one of those two, right? And virus happened, and it didn't work. Like, we were all still so divided because the rich and powerful saw it as an opportunity to gain more power.
That and they fear us kind of coming, if we all united, guess what, their power is
I guess
I know.
guess I don't know why people in
So people just
like
throw out
the idea.
misinformation. It's poison. Ugh.
Yeah, just the simple idea that experts are not experts. People who've studied a certain thing all their lives don't know as much of, or don't know more than that subject than the layman who has a gut feeling that something is true.
Well,
It
well,
just
some leaders told them, oh, you're afraid, you don't want to think a certain way. Don't worry, you don't have to think, you don't have to listen to the truth, no matter how hard it is.
I know. It's so frustrating.
Uh, oh, you know what I wanted to ask you?
Yeah.
Back on the Spider-Man stuff. Okay, so you read this current stuff, you read the stuff in the '90s. I mean, we even did the reread of some of the '90s stuff. Like, can you think of anything? Like maybe like when you read it originally in the '90s and when you read it now, it was like, did anything hit you differently, or did you see anything differently in any of these stories, even in the '90s stuff when we reread it? Or just
Hmm.
something go over your head as a kid, and then when you come back, you're like, oh, I never saw that the first time.
Do you know, it might be a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, a lot of this like
Yeah.
sociological commentary, that when you just don't know, I came from a kind of lower middle class, but still middle class upbringing, and a white guy in growing up in the Midwest, and I think that I was not aware of the complexity of the world. Do you know?
Yeah. Oh, I get that. Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't aware of and so much, like, one of the things we've been educated a lot more in the last few years is the impact of Black Americans and their lives, and how systemic racism exists and has existed for so long and continues to exist. Growing up, I had no idea. Even growing up, a gay kid who didn't yet know he was gay, I had no idea what gay was, because it just didn't exist in rural Wisconsin, and there was no representation on television. So seeing that all speaks, I guess, to the complexity of the writing of these stories. And if if you have a character who is different for whatever reason, I guess that's always been the key for Marvel, right? Is they really specialize in the complex characters rather than kind of the binary good versus evil of DC characters. And so I guess maybe a lot of that would have gone over my head at 13 or 14.
Yeah, I mean, I swear stuff still goes over some people's heads, because I mean, you go online, you'll see people say, "Oh, since when is the X-Men or like Star Trek have been so woke?" It's like, their entire existence since the '60s.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I think that people I'm guilty of it. I have my own, like, now and then I'm like, oh, I wish they hadn't changed the race of that character just to be more, to be more diverse or something like that, But uh a lot of times it works, and there are times when it's done for good reasons, like when Starbuck came back in the Battlestar Galactica, and Starbuck was a woman. That worked so well, and I love stuff like that. When they change something in order to kind of make it fresh and new for story's sake, right? Rather than for diversity's sake, or for, and like I said, I'm a gay guy. I got cast in something recently because I have Bell's palsy, and it's like, yeah, I'll take the paycheck, but it's, like, and if you want to cast, I guess there's a word for it, not when you authentic casting, right? So we want people of authentic races to play those races, and that's valid. But also, we want people who are authentically gay to play gay characters, or people who are authentically trans to play trans characters, or whatever, any category, right? Authentically disabled to play disabled characters, and there is a point at which I kind of am like, yeah, but acting though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, because isn't that the challenge of acting? It's like, can you be this person you aren't?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know how controversial that opinion is exactly. But I know, for instance, I have been denied roles as gay characters because I'm not gay enough.
Oh
So
wow,
what does that mean?
wow.
Right? Yeah. So like, um, so I don't know. It's all just it's all just a little much. I will say, if I can talk about the medium
Yep,
of this comic for me for a
yep,
second. As I said, I read them on the Marvel what is it, Unlimited app, which
yes.
is kind of my not my first experience, but it has been a while since I've checked this out, and I really kind of enjoyed the reading experience. I did this version where you can get a full page of the comic, but then as you page through, it will actually zoom you around each part of the
Oh,
comic from one part to the next, right?
yeah, you could. Yeah,
And
it's this thing. You could change it. You can either just flip a regular page, or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you could do
You
like
can
that.
just have a page, but I
Like,
found this one and I really liked it. I was like, "Oh, this is really neat," because it'll zoom sometimes, and it'll, as you notice, it can actually it'll just cut to the next
oh,
frame too. So sometimes they really give it a lot of thought. They go through the comics and really choose how it's presented to you in either format. So I will say that that was a pretty cool experience. Going from the paper comics to digital.
yeah, I think they call guided view or something. But yeah, you can do it that way. You can just do the regular page. Yeah, and again, like I mean, artists these days, man, they really got to get into detail because I mean, if you read it digitally, you can like zoom in and stuff. And
You can, yeah. The digital, the detail of the art was really good. I will say that the art is fantastic
oh
in
yeah,
this series, and I don't know if it's the same artist for every issue or even the same writer for that matter. But I really did enjoy it. I guess I can look at it here.
it is the
Um,
same writer, but yes, and look, I think they do change artists.
Oh, Steve Orlando did all of them, and then Dev Malia Pramanik did the penciling, and Raul Angulo did the coloring for the first issue. And I'll see if those are the same for the
And
second.
that's interesting. I think it's the same
Oh, it is
writer.
different.
It's the same writer and the same colorist for each one, I think. But the like the
No, colorist is different in episode two too.
oh,
Oh, maybe for the cover, but
uh
not for the interior.
or no, I think oh no, you're right. Yeah, no, because I think they might colorists might swap off every other issue. But yeah, so that is so you okay. Here's a question. So you really didn't notice that they switched artists, did you?
No, not really. It wasn't. There is
It
still kind
wasn't
of a
there.
unified look.
Yeah,
One of the things I didn't like in the original Ghost Rider 2099, on that series, they changed artists every issue, and it was really jarring, and
yeah,
it made it difficult to kind of stay engaged. The and I don't know if it was because they didn't have a style guide maybe for the
maybe.
character, and so they really allowed artists to come in and be experimental, which I get the appeal of that, and especially when you're dealing with a new book, that's the time to be experimental. But it, I think, hurt that comic, which was otherwise pretty good.
Yeah, I think
So,
they pay more attention to that. Now, again, as time marches on, they pay more and more attention to that art. I mean, that started in the 90s because before that they were, comics basically just we sold on the strength of the writer, and then in the 90s they're like, "Oh yeah, man, look at this art. We could sell this just on whoever's drawing it and stuff." But
oh sure, yeah, you get people like Jim Lee starting to get famous, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it's off to the races for artists. And I know a couple of great comic artists, and their skills are just incredible. So
oh
props
yeah,
to everybody who does who works in comic books, man.
oh yeah, like late 80s, early 90s. I mean, Todd McFarlane. I mean, he was drawing Spider-Man, and they're like, "Oh, here, we're gonna give you your own Spider-Man #1, your own book where you can write it too." So they gave the
Oh
artist,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that before. Like usually with older stuff, where it's like from one issue to the next, they'll change artists, and both artists, good artists, but their styles are so different. It kind of like takes you out because it's just like the styles are so different. It just you're just like, oh, okay, well, I can automatically tell. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
this is someone different. These, yeah, like you said, I mean, I can tell just because I got the trained eye, just little differences. But yeah, it's not glaring in any of these that it's like, oh yeah, this is a different artist. That's
Oh, neat. I also, because we're recording this kind of late in after they all come out, and so part of that reason is because I've been so busy, so I haven't been able to. I wasn't able to sit down and just read one after the other after other. So there's a good amount of time between them. Um, I do we want to review like the individual stories?
if you want to, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, it's your show. Do you want to?
I don't. I mean, tell me what. Tell me how you want to do this because no, I want. I'm interested. I'm so interested in your take because again, it's like you haven't been reading a lot of these, so I want to know what your thoughts are on this.
Well, I think because because each issue is different, I think a quick rundown on them might be interesting. And I think here's the kind of unifying thing for all these is that the bad guys are generally not evil.
Yes.
Right? I'm looking through these. I'm looking at the zombies, Dracula, werewolf, Terror. What was that? The fourth one? Terror was the character's name.
Yes, Terry. Yes, yeah.
Is he from something?
He was a character in the '90s. He had like his own book for a little bit. Yeah, he was basically like this shadowy. He's like an immortal being, and then by the '90s, he's basically almost like this assassin type. But it's like he can take body. As kind of seeing this, he can take body parts from people. Like if he takes like a dead person's ear and sticks it through his head, he can hear what they heard and stuff. And
Oh, interesting. I'll have to. I mean, I'll have to wiki that because that seemed like an interesting character, but also one that I was not familiar with. The rest of them were kind of well, Dracula was the actual Dracula, right?
yes.
But the Wolfman was basically a Miguel O'Hara type character, where he was a normal guy that got like I guess he had werewolf in his family blood or something like that.
Yeah,
and then
well,
got activated.
Yeah, there was he another member of the Russell family because there was a Werewolf by Night character, like there's a Werewolf by Night in Marvel, and again, I think his whole thing with the vampire or the werewolf curse is it was like a family curse, so I think this is just his descendant, yeah.
And so the way that is utilized again by a rich and powerful company who controls promises, cures, but only. Oh, well, and isn't that a condemnation of the healthcare industry where we spend so much money working on treatments and never cures because cures don't make enough money, and in this case, cures don't. It doesn't. They only treat him in order to keep him on a leash, pun intended, and yeah. Interesting. A little bit of an indictment there.
Yeah, I mean, I like where he went with all these, where it's like the monsters aren't necessarily the villains, it's someone else. But no, it just got me thinking, and I'm glad it reminded me. I wanted to ask you because as someone who is acted and stuff, and you've someone who's written stuff, it's like does every I have strong feelings on this. Does the villain in every story, whether it's a comic book, a TV, a movie, does every villain have to have a tragic backstory? Like, oh no, he was just misunderstood. He had like a bad childhood, or this or that.
No,
or someone just be a jerk.
But every villain must have a
origin, a backstory.
No, not origin, backstory, but a convincing reason for doing what they do.
Okay.
Right. So there is rarely just evil.
Yeah.
Right. Evil.
I mean, can a convincing thing just be like, oh, well, he's greedy or?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things to think about is that what I try to keep in mind when I write is that the entire concept of good or evil or right and wrong is a social construct. Right. And so I think to myself, yeah. If you think about it, right and wrong, there is no absolute right and wrong, right? They are circumstantial to our society. Anything that you can think of that you think of as wrong, I can make up a world where that isn't wrong, right? Murder, well, on Kronos, if you are murdered, then you deserve to be murdered because you're weak and the stronger survive, right? uh, pedophilia. Well, in ancient Greece, in our own world, it was considered normal to, be sexually active with young people. So like I mean, homosexuality was wrong for so long. For a time, it was kind of okay because the natural world, it was just the way nature works. And then somehow this heteronormative thing came along and we glommed onto that, and anything else was wrong. And then now we're kind of seeing that, oh, right, there is a whole spectrum of human sexuality that exists. And so we're getting the fact that our idea of wrong is changing. All of that to say, your villain is not wrong to your villain, generally speaking, right?
Yeah.
And so they must have a convincing reason why the way they behave is right.
Oh yeah, I get that, where it's like, yeah, you can't have your villain just sitting there going, "Oh, I'm evil for the sake of evil." It's like, no, they have to have some kind of justification, like, "Oh, I have to rule the world because it's so chaotic."
Well, think of the best Marvel villains in the movies, the ones that really, really stuck out. Who are your favorites? I mean, Thanos, obviously. He had a plan that you kind of like, I get it. I mean, maybe I don't agree with his methods, but I get it. And he didn't have a tragic backstory by any means. I mean, I guess a little bit. They do a little bit of it in Infinity War, but really he's just a guy with the wrong way to fix this particular problem that he sees.
Oh yeah, I saw people saying that too. That's the plot hole, where it's basically like, oh, he has the magic wish machine, so he's like, I'm going to blink half of the universe out of existence, because resources are scarce. Well, why couldn't you snap your fingers and double the amount of resources?
Yeah. Well, because that is also a common thread with villains, is a myopic worldview, right? The inability to see another way.
Yeah.
And so that also sometimes can make a good villain. I would imagine that there is probably a good villain out there who has the opposite problem, and they can see too many ways, right? They have I think probably Doctor Strange, maybe in What If, was maybe like that, where he saw all the multiverse, and and that drove him nutso. But like, I think of other good villains. One of my other favorite villains was Killmonger. No, not Killmonger. Well, Killmonger was definitely had a perspective, right, and a sympathetic perspective. He just was kind of going about it all, not wrong.
Yeah. Well, again, he wanted to take all the resources of Wakanda and kill, to basically, go to war with the world, and
right. But why? Why?
Angry childhood?
No, because of the way the world was treating his people. He was defender of Africans and African descendants, and that were being enslaved across the world. And so he was like, look, we have all this power, we should take it and use it, and because this has gone on long enough. And it kind of is like, yeah, you're right, it has gone long enough. But to certain people, the notion of just killing your enemies, that's not a good guy thing to do. And so that was why Killmonger was a villain. I'm thinking of who was David Tennant in Jessica Jones? Kill something. Kilgrave. Kilgrave. Yeah. What a great villain that was. All he wanted was to be loved. And he happened to have this horrible power that made him essentially, it corrupted him. Right?
That's one of the scariest superpowers. Basically, all you have to do is open his mouth and say something, and people do whatever he says.
Yeah. You get that guy inside Avenger Tower, and the world is over. I mean, the world is his. So yeah, that's a great villain. But again, I don't know that they necessarily need tragic backstories.
Yeah.
They just need a skewed perspective that differs from ours. Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I think that relates to these stories, and look at me being all like, bring us back to the point. The villains in these stories are rarely full on villains the way the way we're talking, right? The classic Marvel big bad. And so one of the tricks is that these kind of make Miguel seem dickish because his first instinct is to attack the monster, right? And so he rarely steps back and says, "Wait a second, let's talk this through." He does a couple of times. He's like, "Hey, there's a few times where he's like, oh, we can figure this out before he gets hit or something," and he's like, "Okay, well, talking time's over." But I feel like
it could also be his upbringing too, because he didn't come from money, but again, I'm remembering more and more now this 90s stuff. He was like almost like a child prodigy, so it's like I know the Alchemex company was showing an interest in him or very early on, and we're like, oh, we'll pay your way through school if you come work for us. So it's he didn't come from a background of privilege, but he kind of
he was a barrio kid, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he basically got given privilege later on, so it's still, maybe kind of, he has this narrow worldview because at a certain point he's basically up in the ivory tower. And
yeah. What is the deal with his AI assistant? Do you remember? I mean, why is she so powerful and smart and all that?
I don't know if there's a reason why she's like that. I mean, did they upgrade her at some point? But that's the thing,
because
she's been there since day one, and it's almost I'm like, does everyone have an AI like this?
Is it because is she the reflection of his intelligence, right? Was he able to make an AI that was somehow more than others? The reason I ask is because in the last issue, the one with the man thing, that sucked digital data, when it touched Miguel, it didn't destroy his digital footprint for some reason, including her. And so I'm like, well, I don't understand what made him special in that situation. It did kind of it gave a little hand wavy like sentence or two, but I was kind of wondering about that.
I mean, I think they even said early on that I think he did do some of some or all the programming on her, so that it might be that might be part of his genius. Yeah, just like writing her code and stuff, but. I mean, there have been so many things over the years. Like I know there's a Spider-Man 2099 series from is it 2014 or 2015 where like Miguel was stuck in the present day for a while.
No.
Yeah, and he was kind of working for an early version of Alchemex, but he also had to be careful. He's like, I do the wrong thing. I change my, the future, which is the present I came from. So he had to watch all that.
That seems interesting. I don't know if I'd enjoy that so much. I tend to like things
like a shorter story like that would have been fine, but yeah, it was like a monthly for a while, and it's just like,
yeah. Part of what's fun is seeing him in the future, right? And like maybe seeing him further in the future would be interesting. It's kind of like watching the Star Trek prequels. Like I didn't really care about Discovery or Enterprise that took place before the original Trek. What I really want to see from a Star Trek story is what happens 50 years after Deep Space Nine, right? After the Dominion War. And I want to see how that event shaped the Federation.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I want to see that is because Star Trek has always been a reflection of us. And I think we haven't had a good post 9/11 Star Trek series. Like our society has changed so much. Show us this utopia that is transformed from this crippling, billions dead war, and we've never really seen that. We saw a little bit of it in Picard, but not much.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we need like a new series. I said a little bit after those 90s shows, but with like a whole new cast. Because I mean, again, the Picard thing, it's kind of like the people we've seen already. We need like a brand new crew again.
Yeah. So here we go. Here's the scene where Miguel gets attacked by Man Thing, and it grabs him, which normally, as I said, that just as soon as he touches you, it erases your digital like footprint completely. But all it says is Lila goes, this man thing's deep in your data, like when we nuked the Cabal's financials. But this is physical. The wounds oozing injectable biotech. That's got to burn. But not for long, though. This is one fire I can put out. Your personal data's safe. Your secret, too. Other people won't be so lucky. But
Yeah,
why? Why is his personal data safe?
I don't
What
know.
made him different?
I don't know if it's just I don't know because again because of the way he's programmed her or they knew it was coming because maybe if it if the man thing sneak attacks you it's too late, but if you know it's coming you could set up I don't know firewalls or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit of
The way but
headcanon there, but I really wish that we would have learned what it would have. I want to know why Lila's so powerful. Why? I mean, that would have been a very fascinating thing to have happened to Miguel, right? To have him lose his digital self, right? Because he lives in a penthouse apartment somewhere, and it's a really nice apartment and all that. Like, what happens if Miguel's banking, like his secret could be safe still because all digital record of him would be gone, right? He would just be Spider-Man, right? He would just be a guy who also has this alter ego, but like all the advantages of his modern futuristic life would be gone. I think that would have been a fascinating way to end that story and send us into a new Spider-Man comic.
I think that was just one of the weaker points of having a different character every issue and kind of having your own mini story every issue instead of one big arc. It's because it's like okay, you have 20 some pages. Okay, that character's done and gone. So you kind of had to rush each one. So
yeah, and repercussions tend to go by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, unless we're going to explore some of these more, when they start doing more of the 2099 stuff.
Well, there is still one big thing that happens at the end of this episode. Man-Thing explodes Nuevo York's digital repository, except he doesn't. He does, and it's like though there's this fire that spreads through the city of both digital and physical. But at the end, it's like, oh, but we still managed to maintain banking accounts and what else? It's like scroll to the end here. It's a scorched earth. It's a cleansing fire, and Pixel's failsafe stopped the blaze from going global, but the city's servers are toast. Still, not all the data here is nuked. The life-saving stuff, med tech, bank access, it's been preserved. Oh, I guess okay. The next sentence is.
I think it's saying this new entity is learning not just to nuke everything, but it's like don't nuke the medical records and
Okay, I see what you're saying. So Man-Thing is actually surgically nuking data, which also might explain why he didn't decimate Miguel when he touched him.
Maybe, yeah.
But it would have been nice to say something about that.
Yeah,
I have to read up on Man-Thing a little bit.
Oh yeah, because the present day Man-Thing is like your typical swamp monster, and it's like it was a scientist trying to recreate Captain America's super soldier serum, and then there's an accident in the swamp, and he kind of gets turned into this almost like mindless swamp creature. But the Man-Thing, if it feels someone afraid around it, like he'll touch you and like burn you. That's because that's what this updated version is, instead of the technical stuff. Yeah, just this swamp creature. If it feels fear, it'll burn you. Whoever it feels fear coming from.
Interesting. So it can't hurt Daredevil. Is that do they have a meetup at some point?
I think he has met Daredevil before. It was a long time ago, but yes.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, yeah. It's not a lot. It's not like every 2 seconds he's burning somebody, but yeah, it's usually a lot of bad people too.
Yeah, we didn't say up front for those of you who didn't watch my first episode that my knowledge of modern comic book lore is woefully inadequate. I have not been reading for several decades now, so it's did I just date myself? Like a decade or two, and since college, and so it's been interesting. Yeah, well, I've been trying. I've been doing a bunch of stuff, but also who can afford comic books these days?
Oh, I know.
They're They're pricey. I should have gotten a bunch. I was friends with Len Wein for a while, and I should have gotten a bunch from him while he was around. But that would have been neat. Speaking of Swamp Thing, Len did Swamp Thing,
Yeah,
not
some of
Man
the
Thing.
early stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah, Swamp Thing. Yes. For
Yep.
DC. Yes.
Yeah, for DC.
Oh, yeah,
So what's the difference between Swamp Thing and Man Thing? Is there a difference, or are they kind of copies of each other?
I mean, again, it's like the Marvel DC. You know, this was their version of
Green Arrow and Hawkman and
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Man Thing has more of the burning touch. Swamp Thing really doesn't have that, but yeah, I mean, they were both kind of scientists who got transformed into these creatures. So
Interesting. Yeah, I have been watching a lot of the DC animated stuff. Going off topic again, and I really like how they had a really good Constantine movie, like a dark.
Oh yeah.
What was it? Dark.
Which one was that?
Dark Justice League or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Justice League Dark.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That was pretty good. I like that one, and I think Swamp Thing made an appearance there.
Yeah, they did some Justice League Dark comics, like starting around 2011. And like to say, if you look, you can find some couple different versions of Justice League Dark in the comics too.
Oh, here's a Marvel question for you. I saw an ad, maybe it was in one of these, where for the new zombies, the new Marvel zombies, and I'm like, Marvel zombies has been like a recurring thing apparently. I didn't know this.
Yeah, since like was it the early 2000s? Like every so often, yeah. There
Oh
was
yeah,
like
so Marvel Zombies was first in like 2006 or so, because I remember when it happened.
Yeah.
I was doing stuff.
Yeah.
I was doing
Yeah.
my first podcast.
Every so
But
often,
then
I'll go back and revisit it. Yeah.
that's interesting. I kind of want to revisit that too.
Oh
I
yeah,
need
yeah.
to
Because I haven't read all that stuff, but yeah,
I
I
need
mean,
to read more. I mean, just in general, right? My book, like ever since we have devices that can watch Netflix in bed, it's harder to read just in general.
oh yeah.
I think I need to be better at that.
Well, I was gonna say, if you read something and you want to talk about it, let me know. But
Well, and same, if you ever want to send me something and be like, "Hey, give me your take on this," I'm happy to
yeah.
read it. So,
All right.
but I appreciate these digital. I appreciate these digital comics. This was a fun, nice way for me to like be able to read these on the go and not feel bad about bending paper.
Yes, yeah. Although I am still an old man, I love reading on paper more. But I do both. But yeah, I'm still an old man. I love the paper.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of paper in my life,
Mm.
which is weird because my room right now is just cluttered with paper, and I'm like, I need to spend a day just going through everything and getting rid of it.
Well,
So yeah,
you have an excuse. You're a writer, so I mean, of course, I would expect some paper. Although I'm sure a lot of it's on
but I'm trying to do all that. Like all my notes now are on digital whiteboards and stuff like that. So I'm trying to get more. Although it does help sometimes. I used to have my last book. I had on my sliding wall here. I had my note cards up on the wall, and it's sometimes nice to just be able to look at the structure of a story and see it kind of there.
Oh
So.
yeah.
Yeah, that actually this was something I was thinking about the Apple Vision Pro. Speaking of being paper, but also having things in your real world.
Mm.
Have you tried this thing yet?
I haven't. No.
Oh man, get yourself to an Apple store for a free demo because it is kind of crazy. It is just amazing. It's
Oh.
unlike anything you've ever tried, and the tech behind it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been wanting to try all this VR stuff. And speaking of playing,
Yeah, I generally don't like VR. I have always said that AR is the way to go, and the Vision Pro is VR. Like it does cut you off from the world, but it it melds your digital content with your physical world in a way that is different from anything I would have expected.
okay. Huh.
So,
All right.
I'm
Well,
into
all
it.
right. All right. Well, I have to go. But before we end this, is there anything you want to promote? What's this Apple TV series you were talking about? Let's promote that.
Oh, yes, Sugar airs on April 5th, apparently, and it stars Colin Farrell and a couple other people that you will recognize, and James Cromwell is in it, and me in the first episode, so you don't have to wait long to see me. And my book Decimus, it's called The Vampire's Curse. Decimus Book 1 is out on Amazon in hardcover, softcover, Kindle. It's easy to find. My first Inspector Chronicles book should be out soon, although I don't have a release date on that yet. And what else? I guess the show that I just got cast on is CSI Vegas, and my episode should be out somewhere also in April. So next couple months are going to be very interesting seeing stuff from me.
All right. I was gonna say, if you want to keep me updated, I'll blast it out on our social media. Be like, oh, go see our friend Travis Richey on this show or this show or.
Nice, awesome, yeah, definitely do that for Sugar. That's going to be fun. The CSI show is I don't know much about it yet, so we'll see.
All right, everyone. Thank you again, Travis, for joining me. We'll have to do this again at some point.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone.
All right, good to see you, Phil.
Go see this on every other show.
Take care.
Thank you. You too.